Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Hey, today we're going to be talking to Gary Leblanc. Now, he's the in charge of major accounts, kitchen accounts at Richelieu. So some of you have already heard of him. Some of you may know him. Some of you may have seen him speak at conferences or read his articles in the CMA. But either way, a world of wisdom here today. And we're going to be talking about the supply chain issues that have been happening for so long, what Gary thinks is going to happen in the future, what you can do as a company to get ready for those things, and how you can start to organize your company for what he feels is coming next. And when he says what he feels is coming next, I think it's flavored by what he sees all around the market. And keep in mind, his territory has been North America and South America. I know he was just at Eurocachina over in Europe. So I'm sure that'll enter the conversation as well. So looking forward to hearing what Gary's got to say. We'll see you on the other side. Mr. Gary Leblanc, how are you?
I'm doing just fine, Dominic. It's nice to be here. Nice to be asked to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I sense you've got a lot of wisdom, and I'm trying to be polite. You've got a lot of time in this business.
I think you are being all too kind, but I've been in the industry for a while. This marks my 47th year in the business, and I've had a long career in the industry working on the supply side. I started out really in territory sales in the metropolitan New York market back in the mid 70s, and continued to work my way up through the Grass organization. Actually, I worked prior to that for a company called Ajax Hardware, which most people have not heard about, but they were the original parent company of Revyshelf, which became a separate division. But anyway, that's where I started, and I've been able to work my way up through the organization, leaving that company back in the early aughts as their managing director. Started my own firm, sourcing.
Yeah.
And did that for 5 years until the supply chain wheels fell off. So I'm somewhat familiar with the
supply chain keeps coming up. That's the theme of our
coming up. Exactly. And then for the last 13 years, I've been with Richelieu America in a variety of capacities. So my travels have taken me all over the world. I had responsibility at one point for North and South America. I've traveled to Asia, been in and out of factories there, been in and out of factories all throughout Europe. And so I've seen the best and the worst of it. But what I have seen and met are a lot of people, and I've seen a great deal of what I would call opportunity around the globe. But that brings me back to here today. So I appreciate the opportunity to help participate in this.
Yeah. Well, we're here to educate, inform, and inspire, cabinet makers, furniture makers. You and I were talking about contract furniture making just before the call started. I sense you've got a depth and a breadth in this business that a lot of us, we just need that perspective. So I'm glad you're here today. So I'm just going to restate our topic so that everybody knows. Today, we're here to actually dig into your knowledge, your background, what your thoughts are on the supply chain issue. And the topic today is supply chain. What, why, and when. Paint us a picture of how we got to where we are today, where we're behind in a lot of places because of supply chain issues, but it seems like some things are opening up in other areas.
Yes, they are. To do a backup, industry was caught by surprise by COVID. The severity of the shutdowns that affected Europe, Asia, and North America and South America as well. But and to an extent, it is still affecting countries like Europe and like Asia. And COVID is regenerating itself, and so it is by no means out of the way. But industry has responded. People are getting vaccinated. There has been a drop, and that's merciful, and a drop in the number of deaths. So we are progressing at this stage, but there are still some lingering effects of it. When the initial phase of COVID hit,
Mhm.
there were a lot of people, including our company, that felt like business was going to decline. It did anything but decline. It took off, and there
Yeah.
were a number of reasons for that. And in one of them, well, people started looking around their home, and they were having to create more space because the kids were home from school and having to learn, and the parents were home from work, and they were having to work. And so the existing space of the home no longer fit. And that created an issue. But also, when COVID hit, people were able to work from home.
Right.
And they found that they could work anywhere, not just from home. So that created new opportunities. People started looking around and say, hey, I don't have to live in.
I don't have to live in Chicago. I don't have to live in.
I can go down and live in, Point Pleasant, South Carolina. Thank you very much. And so they moved. And so there was a lot of demand that went into housing and a number of locations, all of which was unexpected. And suddenly there was a lot more demand for cabinetry and all that goes into it than there had been in the past. And if anything, we got caught. And of course, we go to order more. And because of the COVID restrictions on the workforce, you can only work your people so much. And people need time off as well. Plus, people weren't showing up for work.
Yeah. And I think let me add this, but as a counterpoint to see if you have something on this, we tend to think that we're not getting our, I'm just going to say drawer pulls as a simple example. And so the factory that makes the drawer pulls, people aren't showing up to work, so they can't make the drawer pulls. But it goes further back than that. The guys that are mining the minerals to make the metal to make the drawer pulls have the same problem. The shipping company, the guys that make the saw blades that cut the wood, make the molder blade, they're not showing up for work either. And it's just huge. Am I right there?
There were no industries that were immune.
That's right.
I mean, look at what happened to the automobile industry. And this is not a political statement, but we handed people money to keep the economy going at a time you couldn't buy anything, right? And people weren't traveling. Normally they'll take a vacation or two a year. They weren't traveling, so they had disposable income, and they chose to reinvest it in their home. And they want to buy a car. Well, there are no cars to buy.
Yeah.
And so because of the chip shortage, because Tesla was the only one that got the chip situation right. You were the only one that guessed right. Everybody else cut back on chips. And so Ford, General Motors, Toyota, to a lesser extent, they cut back on Chrysler, they cut back on their chip purchases. And so that capacity went down. And not only did it go down, but the chip manufacturers didn't have the capacity as well. And when they built, and when they lowered or slowed their supply chains, it took forever to ramp them back up again. And so then material starts to flow, and it goes oftentimes by container, and there was a shortage of containers.
Of containers themselves, yeah. The craziest little thing, right? The law of unintended consequences is how we refer to it in business. You think you're doing one thing, and it's actually something else affects it, something else affects it.
And then when they get over here, there's no place to put them. And the reason there's no place to put them is they don't have the drivers and they don't have the chassis. Now, of course, California was dealing with the potential threat of dock worker strike. It's still not over yet. There was also a potential for a rail strike. So even as late as the IWF show, which is back in late August, the highest number of containers sitting off the shore was 2 days before the IWF. The highest number of containers throughout the entire pandemic was sitting off the coast. Now, were they in LA? No. There were some out there, but though they had directed those containers because of the threat of the port strike to the East Coast. Oh. And so you've got not only the material that's coming from Europe coming in, they're trying to offload, but you have the redirected containers to the East Coast that would have normally been handled on the West Coast showing up on the East Coast. They don't have the place to put it. They put the containers. They don't have the chassis to take the containers away, and they've got a shortage of drivers through COVID, or just simply they just don't have enough drivers.
It's hard to find people. It's hard to hire people.
It's exactly. It's hard to find people because you have an unprecedented number of baby boomers who are retiring. Now, stock market was pretty good, so they said, "Okay, hey, I'm doing all right." Maybe they had enough Bitcoin before I went.
Before it tripled in value.
My point is they felt okay about their retirement, and so they chose to do it. And why put up with the nonsense? I'll take mine and I'll leave right now. And so we're seeing baby boomers retire to the clip of about 3 to 4 million a month. Who's making that up? The millennials aren't making that up, even though there are more millennials, 100 million millennials out there. It's still not enough workers to make up for the rise in work,
right,
and in specialized skills, because we do
specialized trade skills, and
especially trade skills. But truck drivers, younger people aren't signing up to be truck drivers. Who's going to replace those baby boomers that had a very different work ethic? People expect different things out of life at different generations, and with all due respect to my millennial friends, baby boomers who work like dogs. We work like dogs. We can get allowances. You're out there mowing lawns and washing cars and running your paper out and doing the things that we did to try to to be able to go out and maybe afford some clothing or to be able to go out and entertain. It just, you bought your car, you paid for it. At least where I grew up, you did.
Yeah. Well, me too. Yeah.
And so just a quick anecdote. I'm a product of trade school. I went to Henry Abbott Tech in Danbury, Connecticut. And I was back there for my 50th +2 reunion. And I was talking with one of the heads of the shops. And he was telling me about auto mechanics and the auto body shop, excuse me. And he said, these kids coming out of auto body will make $100,000 a year, a couple of years experience. And I said, what? $100,000 a year. I said, how was that so? He goes like this. I said, what's that? He said, that's texting. Nobody's paying attention driving today. And so they have to fix the cars. And parents don't want to drive their kids around. That's why they bought them a nice car, so they wouldn't have to drive them. I said, when you were growing up, your first car probably cost you $200.
I was just going to say $400, but that shows my age. It's
a 61 Chevy Impala bubble top, which is worth some money today. That was my first car. And no, you didn't take collision on. If you got in a fender bender, you bought another car to replace it. But these parents want their kids' cars fixed, and they want them out there. And so the demand has changed, and there isn't enough people who are coming in to take those. So you're adding the lack of skill sets on top of all of these problems that have compounded themselves. So where do we go from here? And that's really the next question that I'll ask myself. Supply chain is catching up. There are certain product lines that they're not completely caught up, but clearly there is it is the rat eating this. It is the snake eating the rat. Excuse me.
Yeah, I got you. So that analogy, it's passing its way through, right?
It's passing its way through, and it is getting better. You can see lead times dropping. Is it where it needs to be yet? By no means. And also part of this is I had these conversations with my colleagues at the show, IWF show. When are we going to get that reduction, LeBlanc? And
what do you mean by reduction?
Price reduction. Prices have gone up 20 to 25% over the last 2 years. And people are saying, hey, wait a minute.
When's it coming back?
Freight rates are gone down. And quite frankly, freight rates have gone down, but there is a caveat to it. Okay. I was quoted in late August, $4,900 for a 40-foot sea freight container to the port of LA, Long Beach. Contracts have that same container going between $13,000 and $15,000. At peak, it was going for as high as $31,000. So the price have come down, but has it translated into lower costs yet? Not entirely. because freight forwarders have contracts with their importers, companies like ourselves, and we're signed on to get the best rates at a certain level of containers, certain number of containers. If you miss the number of containers, then you pay a penalty.
Right.
In so long as you got your contract. Now, the contract gave you a favorable price when you entered into it, but some of these contracts are not expired yet. And so any vendor can come along and say, I'm going to take a $5,000 container. I'm going to put some product out there because the factory in Asia, they've got capacity. Why?
Right.
Because the buyers have slowed down. So they can hit the market pretty quick. And it makes it a little more difficult for manufacturers or distributors to respond to that because we, in fact, not only are the freight companies still charging higher rates, but we've got a inventory full at a higher price.
Exactly. So you've already got stuff that you paid a lot for that's still sitting in some cases in a warehouse. Right. That still has to be sold and recoup the costs that you had there.
Yep.
So it's going to take a while for all of that to work its way through the system, is your point.
That's the whole point. You got it, Dominic. That's going to take some time for it to work through. And so here's the tricky part. Okay. What do we do in 2023? We've had to deal with inflation for our entire careers. We've dealt with recession for entire careers. We know what to do to stay profitable, to keep our businesses healthy. We know what we have to do.
I hope so. That's why they listen to this show. How to stay profitable in cabinetry, right?
Exactly. So you make the steps that you need to make in order to stay profitable. But we haven't had to deal with deflation. And that's one that we really need to put our thinking caps on, because normally we grow our businesses through increases in revenue. I don't think we're going to be seeing that in 2023. In certain markets, certain segments of the market, yeah, you'll see some building on it, particularly in desirable areas in which to live. But I don't think that's across the board. And if we're dealing with a downturn, even if it's in units, I'm sorry, even if it's in revenue and not in downturn, not downturn in units, revenue still covers a lot of sins in business.
That's true.
And that might not necessarily be there. So I have been talking with my clients is we need to push our chair away from the desk for a little bit, start to think about our businesses, because this is unprecedented times we're living in. You know, what's going to jump up us and bite us in the rear end? I don't know.
Well, listen, you couldn't roll a pair of wackier dice to get the combination we're in right now. So bring it on, because we don't know. But if I understand you correctly, are you saying we've got to focus now more on profits and on efficiencies internally to make sure we're not wasting, we call them profit leaks here. But when you said push away from the desk, what does that mean?
Well, what it means is we need to really take a look at our business. And so there are opportunities to grow the bottom line, to grow the top line, and to improve the bottom line. To grow the top line, we need to be looking at new revenue streams.
Love it.
And they can come from a variety of different areas. But as we saw on this visit to Eurocachina, we did in June. We saw the Europeans years ago started to take a page out of IKEA's book by starting to march through the entire home. They're building cabinetry for the entire home. Now, we tend to stay in our own lane: furniture, closets,
right,
kitchens, bedrooms,
garages.
We tend to stay in our own lane and not let that lap over into others. But Europe, they're well past that. And so I was at the highest end manufacturer in Italy, a company called Bofi. And this kitchen flowed right into the living room. It's gorgeous, beautiful, just beautiful work. And they had some upholstered furniture there. And I asked the sales representative, where did that furniture came from? She said, oh, we made it. I said, you didn't do it on the outside? No, we make it ourselves. We hired a designer.
Mm.
We've got an upholsterer. We've got a foam manufacturer, and we design it and we manufacture it ourselves, so it all blends into it. Absolutely gorgeous work. Am I advocating that people go out and become start to design furniture and incorporate it in the entire home? Europe's doing it.
Well, hey, the architecture mill workers are already doing it. They do buyouts for upholstery and for glass and steel, and the architecture mill workers listening are like, well, I do that already, but they're maybe not doing homes as much.
They're not necessarily be doing that. They're doing the commercial woodworking side. So it's something to be looked at. I had a session the other day on lighting. Normally they leave the lights to, cabinet makers will leave the lights to the electrician. We have in the kitchen industry, we have a bifurcated system where we'll do the routings, the shelf support holes and the puck holes, and then we turn it over to the architect. We turn it over to the
electricians, yeah,
and or the installer or someone other than us. And yet in Europe, all of the cabinets come pre-lit. It's sold like a lamp.
Mm.
So when you buy a lamp, you go out, you stop off, you buy the bulb, you go home, you plug it in, you turn the light on, it works. Kitchen cabinets over there are the same thing, except the bulb is already in the cabinet.
Everything's there. The installer puts it together.
The only thing the customer has to decide is what part of the kitchen they want lit and how do they want to control it. Do they want to control it with a remote control? They want to control it with an app, or do they want to use their voice, Alexa, Google enabled?
Right.
All of that technology exists today, and as well as tunable, because you can go from 2700 Kelvin, which is candlelight, all the way up to 6500, which is a task light, and you can vary that intensity and that color, again, all throughout control. So my point is this: there's X number of dollars on every freaking job, not just in lighting, but in general. There's a certain amount of money on every job. We need, as we push back from our desk, we need to be looking at those opportunities to see how much more of that business can I get. And maybe you don't have the expertise at this point to get it, but you can hire experts. You can hire people with that knowledge.
Well, and even more than that, as you said, when you say push back from your desk, you have to stop and think like a business owner, which happens to be what this show is about. How can I help the customer better? And if lighting is going to be a thing and you're like, I don't know how to sell lighting as part of this, well, maybe you need to find out how, or maybe it's time to start to move to 3D rendering so they could show shadows and light so that you can explain it to your customers. So they go, oh, honey, I think we would like to light this area.
There are plenty of people out there, and certainly your supply chain you should be relying on, and you should be talking to your supply chain about what are some of the opportunities that I'm missing. Because the expertise on how to get around that is out there, but you have to ask, and or be clever enough to ask. And we all have been successful because we built networks. We built networks of knowledge. And if you don't look, if you want to learn how to fly a plane, don't come to me. Okay, you'll end up in the Pacific Ocean. All right, but there are certain things that I can help on because I've got a lot of expertise. But the same is true for any product out there. Is go learn more about the product to see where you have the opportunity to grow your top line.
Yeah, something that's always been interesting to me throughout my career in all of my businesses, including the business of being a business coach, is that the people at the top of their game are part of industry associations.
Yes.
So we have people on here right now who are members of AWI, who are members of AMAC, which is up in Canada, who are members of NKBA, who are members of the Kitchen Cabinet Association. Right. And the reason they are members of that is so that they can pick up these little tips, these little conversations that you probably could read it in a magazine, but it doesn't have the same impact. It just doesn't come across the same. But when you're talking to somebody down in Florida or up in Winnipeg who's installing puck lights and found a way to do an upsell, and you talk to somebody who now is over in Michigan and they're building pet beds as part of this extended kitchen. Yep. We're doing your cabinets anyways. Why don't we make you a dog crate that matches? Oh my God, we could take care of our dog too. Absolutely. And it's an $800 add-on, but it's an $800 add-on with a $600 margin.
Exactly.
Right.
You're 100% right.
And you need to pick those ideas up from going to the events you've gone to, being a member of an industry association, et cetera.
No, you're absolutely right. top end growth, that's one place. Bottom line growth is another place. And therein lies the where we're going to need to give some thought to where the biggest opportunities are to reduce cost. Because you can influence the bottom line as well by raising sales, and you can also improve the bottom line by reducing cost in the business.
We call that profit leaks here, how to find and fix your 8 profit leaks. Exactly. There's 8 profit leaks in every contracting or construction business, and they're not all about increasing sales.
That's correct.
The mistakes we make in estimating are an echo or a burp or indigestion that pass all the way through the company. If you're making those mistakes in operating costs and overheads, it's leaking. The money just leaks out. You don't even see it. It's just constantly leaking.
What we need to be in search of is best practices. And you're 100% right. The place to find that is through networking and building this network of suppliers and people that you really sort of an informal board of directors that you can bounce things off. This is how we learn and grow. A little cul-de-sac. I was at the EBC in Colorado. I was a featured speaker there, and one of the cabinet companies that was presenting, talked about his own cabinet company up in Canada. And the numbers just blew me away what he was able to do. He produces in 20,000 square feet of space, 250 cabinets a day with 25 people. Think about those numbers. And he's throwing a 20% EBITDA. 250 cabinets a day, 25 people, 20,000 square feet of space, and he has a finish line. And so that is, and when I asked him where were the biggest improvements made, he said in panel processing, in panel handling. So it's just in panel movement from one phase of the operation to the other.
Yeah, incremental. It's nothing that you don't look at it doesn't change the world. You look at it, you're like, it's a combination of small incremental changes. Exactly. And I would have to add the attitude of being a company that looks for those changes.
100%. And his employees led him there. He threw it out there and the employees worked it out. But you know what he did? He shared with them the profit improvement with his employees in order for them to earn more. And now he pays one of the nicest wages in the area. So who's leaving him? And on top of that, here's an opportunity to do a reset, because it's possible that the revenue is going to, but we can still improve the profitability of our business during this time. But you have to invest in it, and you have to get your employees engaged. I was talking with one client the other day. He said, Gary, if this guy in Canada, if these numbers bear out, he said, based on what you said, I could reduce my company workforce by 25%.
Right. So that the intent to do that is how you get there. It's the entrepreneurial question for people who've read the E-Myth Revisited. It starts with that question: how can I ... How can I reduce my workforce by X and keep my sales at a certain level or increase at a certain level?
And what he said to me was very interesting. He says, if I could reduce it by 25%, it would take away all of the people that don't want to show up. The ones you have to hire.
The ones that are the problem anyways.
He said all the problems. He said it would take, because then I could afford to pay the people that do show up, that are dedicated to what I do, that get it. They're not leaving me because, we have a great work environment. He said, if I can get rid of the problems, he said, it'd be a much better business and I could afford to pay them more. And I see this as a wonderful opportunity. It's a great time to be able to do it, because it looks as if the industry is going to go through a reset. So good opportunity to have these conversations with your employees.
Yeah, the best. I mean, it comes down again to being the leader who wants to lead your company through something. Look, we all have problems. We have labor problems, we have supply problems, but everybody has them.
Yep.
Everybody has them. So the attitude that I have as the owner of being a problem solver, of being a fixer, of being creative, creativity will win the day over money any day. Any day. You can throw money at a problem, you're probably not going to solve it. You can throw cleverness at a problem and you will definitely solve it.
And culture kills innovation.
So so interesting. Tell us about that.
Culture kills innovation. If you've got a culture in your organization that doesn't value innovation, it will kill it. status quo. We tried that once before. It didn't
Oh,
work.
I see. That's that type. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. If you build a culture of innovation, of attempting things, to a high degree of communication among your employees, they'll tell you what's going on. If you care to listen to them, they will tell you what's going on. But they also want to contribute anyway, because they want to be involved in a business that cares, that's going to stick around, that is willing
that's trying.
That's trying, exactly. And even I've heard about millennials. Baby boomers are just happy to have a job, right? But millennials want to care about something. They want to care about the organization that they're in. They want it to mean something. And I can't look. I'm not a millennial, but my work ethic is completely different. But I care, and they do too. And I think it's important that we recognize that and make them part of the solution.
So one of the things that your team is listening to you when they kind of make fun of you, right? And here's what I mean. I had a company, I've worked with them for a long time. They had the foreman, and this is more of a production facility. It's a large facility now, but it doesn't matter because I've seen this happen in other shops as well. So the guys on the floor made the foreman a t-shirt, and it was a silhouette of a buck, like a deer. Mm-hmm. But it was a deer and a half a deer. So think of a stuffed deer that you'd see on the wall, but it was a silhouette, right? So a black t-shirt, white image. So it was a buck and a half. And they made it for him. And the reason they made that for him is because he said, look, every step you take costs the company a buck and a half. And he said it so much, the guys made him a t-shirt. But that's the part of so they're making fun of him. But to his point, when we waste a step, it's a buck and a half.
Yep.
And it's called lean manufacturing. It's called continuous improvement. And some people out there are rolling their eyes. They're like, I'm about to hang up this episode. Well, don't. We're going to put it in front of you again. Think about the efficiencies and listen to your crew, because they're going to tell you. And again, we've done this with Rick Patak. Now, Rick has been a guest on this show many, many times. He's our foreman in residence. The guy's a cabinetry foreman through and through. He also does our lean stuff. But one of the exercises that he takes every company that we work with through is, hey, take a video of just one piece of your manufacturing floor, and we'll see what has to change. You see guys walking on the job site with no tape measure, with no box knife, with no pencil. And you think, well, why does that matter? Because then I've got to walk over to Gary and say, hey, can I borrow your tape measure? Yeah. And then I got to walk back. Well, how many steps is that? 5 steps there, 5 steps back. That's 10 times a buck and a half. Who pays for that? Not the guy who needs to borrow the tape measure. You do. The business owner does. Then he needs a box cutter. He's making a pallet. He does this, doesn't have thing on a rack. It adds up. And who pays the price? The business owner. Because the customer's not, you can't go to the customer and say, hey, our guys don't carry tape measures, so we had to bump up the price a little bit because it took longer than we thought to build this thing. Can't do that.
You don't get paid for your—
I agree with you, right? You don't get paid for wasted work.
No, not at all.
So a couple of very, very interesting things here. You talked about, we have to step away and become business people. Think about the top line and the bottom line. New sources of revenue, new ways to help people more, like adding lighting. There might be some changes in our business that are required. You briefly mentioned, if you don't have the skill inside, go get a consultant or get a technical person. What do you mean by that? Like a company that does 3D renderings or drawings for you? Or
you can. It's driven largely based on where you're going. In terms of process improvement, kaizen events have been used for years to help with process improvement, but they're bringing consultants in to help you set up to organize a kaizen, unless you've got somebody on your staff that can do it. But it's simple. To me, kaizen events are just common sense. Just you're using your employees, you're writing things down, but you're also taking the time for the people outside their day to invest in an event like that, to help map out what steps are being done and what can we eliminate without changing the product quality itself. Mm-hmm. How, in many cases, can improve it. So if you don't have those skill sets online, bring them in. There are numerous companies out there that do automation at various levels. I mean, even just panel handling equipment.
Hey, I had a client who just put a dowel and bore system in place.
Yep.
His labor per cabinet, per carcass dropped through the floor.
Yeah.
Incredible. But he was still winning business at his old method of manufacturing.
In the thing that you've got to look at, your dowel insertion machines, what's your uptime? What's your downtime? How do you have maintenance issues? Is a piece of equipment reached its serviceable life? Would a second piece of equipment go in there to help? Just looking at each step in the process, and also being very aware of what the state of the art is. Now, state of the art doesn't necessarily have to mean unaffordable, because there's an ROI on everything. And what's an effective ROI date? Well, your listeners may see 1 year, but I think a more prudent would be a 3-year ROI on a business. But then also you have to prioritize what those are. And you also have linkage, because you can really improve in one area and you haven't improved in other areas. So
and you have to figure out the top bottleneck. Like
Exactly.
where is the first bottleneck? And we've heard Paul Akers say this before.
Yep.
Once you've solved the first one, guess what? There's another one. But go solve that second. And then you find another bottleneck. Go solve that again. And if you run out of bottlenecks, which will never happen, go back to the top.
Yep.
And think about your bottlenecks again, but continue to just keep working on those bottlenecks. Some of them can be solved in 10 minutes. Some might take 10 months.
There was a little device that this company in Muskogee I was talking about earlier. It's a little pallet lift. It has it's like a Roomba, right? It goes to its own nesting area. It comes out from underneath a pallet rack. It goes over. It's been told electronically that the cart needs to move. It's been full, it's got all its components on it. So it comes out from the rack, it goes over, it picks the cart up and then drops it down the line and it goes right back to its spot to recharge. Now, when the assembler goes to pull the product, there's a sequence to it. If he pulls the wrong product, he'll get a red light. It's really? A little LED red light. Red light pops up. So he's got to pick the right piece first, right? Then it gets a green light. And so he goes right through the process, because the panels don't always get loaded in the way, but there's an RF tracking device on every single panel. So the entire system in the shop is talking to one another. They know where anything is. They know where the delay is. They know exactly where to focus to be able to get the product out the door. And they will know when the product is loaded on a truck that everything is there.
That everything is loaded on the truck. That's nirvana
everything
for a
is
lot
there.
of people.
Everything, this RF device on everything. So they will know when the truck is loaded, and they will also know when it's loaded in the proper sequence. Okay, right. Because they have a delivery to do. So these are just some of the examples that I've learned along the way.
Let me just stop for a second, because some people listening don't have a shop that's fully automated. And so when they hear about this little Roomba device that's job is to move 6 feet, to move a rack from one, unload a rack or load a rack, that's not where you start. Where you start is what you've said already, Gary. You just start by organizing your company, being a company that tracks things, being a company that understands the very boring, it's such a boring name, I don't know how else to call it, the business operations flowchart, your manufacturing operations flowchart. Start to understand your profit leaks, all of the things we talk about in the show, but you have to just start to become the leader that cares about the things.
That's correct.
And eventually that passes through. It's a reflection of all those things.
This owner is on a 20-year journey.
It's taken him 20 to do this?
The big speed came in 2015 when he really started to concentrate on panel handling. Up until that point, it had been real slow progress. And then when he decided to really engage, because he's been getting advice all along from the machinery manufacturers, what's the state of the art? What should I be investing in? What's the next step? And if you ask the right questions of the right people, you get the right answers. And so then it becomes a question of can I afford it? Can I afford not to do it? Well, really, what's the ROI? And so he's been on a 20-year journey, but he made his biggest stride since 2015 when he really tackled panel handling. So he's got robotic arms that move one thing to the other. It's just cool. Here's a video on it. I'll share it with you. It's just cool as can be. What he's able to accomplish.
This has been fantastic. I'm sorry that we haven't had you on the show sooner. I think
My
though,
pleasure, my friend.
I think you caused yourself a problem, because now I want to have you back to talk about new sources of revenue. It's one of my favorite things. It costs a certain amount to get a client, to get a
Yes.
customer, to get a job. It just costs, right? So we buy that from the market through our advertising, through our marketing. Even if we do word of mouth and referral, which is a very high risk, high stress place for a business owner to be, relying on word of mouth and referral, there's still a cost to getting that customer. And you're wasting it. You and me, we're wasting it if we're not going back and trying to get as much business as we can from that customer, just to help them. I'm not trying to hose them. I just want to help you. And if I can help you, I can help
Stuart
me too.
Reich, one of the founders of Transform Homes, who didn't make it through the pandemic, unfortunately, he said to me something years ago I never forgot. He said, "Gary, Geppetto is dead." Now you know who Geppetto is, right?
Yeah, the maker of Pinocchio.
Maker of Pinocchio. He's dead. Right, the guy coming off the boat with the bib overalls and the tape measure, he's not there around anymore. And so, how do these people get the jobs done that they need inside the house? Well, they have a successful kitchen, closet, whatever, and the installers showed up on time. They didn't make a mess of the house. Job was finished in a timely manner. It was successful. Where do you go next? What room do you want us to do next? So these are just opportunities that avail themselves if you just ask the right questions. So it's, as I say, it's not getting any easier, but if you already have an established relationship with a client, it's a whole lot easier to go back to them when they're ready for the next project.
Yeah, wonderful. This is great. Gary, if somebody wants to find you this big wide world, how the heck do we find you?
You can reach me at G Leblanc, GLEBLANC at richelieu.com. Or you can always catch me on my cell phone, 336-480-1521.
Yeah.
And so you can always reach me. Now, if I don't know that you coming in, it could be that I think you're a telemarketer, but always leave me a message and I'll call you.
Or text first. But you also speak a lot at different conferences and trade shows. You went to Euro Cucina. Do you have another speaking gig coming up that people might see you at?
I have the Euro Cucina presentation will be done nationally on the Richelieu website. I don't have the date for that, but it will be coming up soon. And that is, it takes about an hour to get through it, maybe 50 minutes or so. But we'll be covering all of the highlights. We took about 1,000 images and we boil them down to an effective presentation. But we look at all the trends that happen in Europe and give some insight into the ones that we think will have some resonance here in the United States. So that'll be coming up here within the next month. I'm gonna try and get myself on that. Do I register in advance, or what do I do? Yeah, you can go right through the Richelieu website. You can register. Okay. And then Amanda Conger and I are talking about doing one for the CMA. I'm sorry, we did one for the CMA, but we're doing one for the ACSP. So you'll see Leblanc out there a couple of times, and I do have an article coming up in the CMA magazine on a more detailed explanation about the new sources of revenue, because I think that's going to be important for 2023. Okay. And so if you want me back to talk about that, would be very, very glad to do that. I think we do. Yeah, it's funny that thank you. I appreciate that. The couple of names always come up. Amanda comes up, Doug comes up, Harry comes up all the time. Yeah. But those are people adding value to the industry. Those are the people at the lead of adding the value to the industry. And I think we all appreciate it. Sir, thank you. I really appreciate it. I know you're just about to head out traveling again, so I'm sure you have got lots of work on your desk. So Gary, push away from your desk and get some perspective. That's what I'm going to say. Do appreciate the opportunity to speak into the viewers. I hope you enjoyed the time. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. Bye-bye. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening in. And Gary, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the future, what that looks like, the supply chain issues and why they've happened and the backstory behind it and all the intricate parts that go together. But also thank you for your wisdom and insight in what people can do to look towards the future, how they can improve their cabinetry business. It was very nice to talk to you because I think you and I link very closely together on the business of the cabinetry, the architecture, millwork, the furniture business itself. A couple of high points here. Things are catching up.
right? So the supply is changing, but there's still some gaps. And as you know, just one little thing can hold everything up. So make sure that you're on top of things. And as Gary said, and I agree with, become the kind of company who measures things, become the kind of company that thinks about the future. It's not going to change anything today. And by tomorrow at lunchtime, not much is going to change. But if you start to put that type of attitude in place in your business, over time, things will change. They'll change the way you want them to. And so keep listening to this show or contact me if you need to, if you want to put a strategic plan in place so you can build the future that you want, so you can get this company to where it needs to be, so you can measure the right things. So heck, so you know what to ignore, whatever it is. Get in touch with me. I'm always happy to talk to you. And you guys know how to get in touch with me. Just send me a text, 604-837-8361. All right, enough of that right now. Listen, we're going to go to the next segment. It's either going to be story time with Dom, which is the segment that we do, but we're also changing that. And here's where I want you to play a part. We're going to be doing a new format for the end segment. The reason is I've done 300 story time with Doms. There's really only so many stories anybody can come up with, but there are unlimited questions from you guys. And so if you have a question, if you have a frustration, if you have a concern, if you're wondering about something, what I want you to do is go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. That's where you'll be able to leave a custom message. I'll take that message and you'll now become part of the podcast. And I'll answer the message as soon as you've left it. So Brian Steinhardt just did one out of Waterfall Kitchens in Australia. Jeff Gratney did one by asking on the Facebook group. Seamus did one. Murray did one. We've got a couple of questions already floating around out there. So thank you to those of you who've done that. But if you want to have your question answered here on the podcast, go to speakpipe.com/ask Dom. And go ahead and leave your question there, and I'll answer it on the show. All right, let's get ready for the next segment. Story time with Dom. Ask Dom a question. We're not sure, but we'll see when you get there. All right, thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. This question came via the Profit Tool Belt website. And thanks for it, Brett. Hey, I'm running a company with multiple equipment, multiple crews, and multiple pieces of equipment. How do I track maintenance on my machines? Because having a full-time mechanic isn't an option for us yet. All right, Brett, well, that's a great question. Thanks very much. And you know what? We're going to answer it right here, right now. Okay, so the question that we have in front of us to answer in this segment of the show is just about equipment maintenance, multiple crews, multiple pieces of equipment. I get the feeling from Brett that he's dealing with a lot of small equipment. How do you track all that stuff? Well, first of all, Brett, congratulations, my friend. You're thinking like a business person and not just a contractor. Fantastic that you're a contractor, but you're evolving and you're going through it. You're starting to think about the future of your business. When you start to think about questions like this, awesome. So first of all, do I need to track and maintain all these things? Yes, just like you need to maintain, change the oil in your car every X miles, or for those of you in Canada, every X kilometers. If you want it to last. If you're beyond using residential grade equipment, then yeah, you've got to maintain this stuff. There has to be some level of maintenance, even from a safety perspective, not much less a cost perspective. So I've got a simple 2-step system for you that takes you to step number 3. How's that? Instead of saying a 3-step system, it's a 2-step that takes you to step number 3. Step number 1 is list all of your equipment. So what's all of the equipment that needs maintenance, right? And so go list all your trucks, all of your small tools. If you got a Vermeer, maybe you call it a ditch witch or something like that. If you got a forklift, just list all the compressors, list all of that stuff, right? Pneumatic nailers, whatever it is, list all of those things. And then next to those things, I want you to write out what kind of maintenance that normally needs, right? So the compressor needs to be drained every once in a while, right? So you should write drained compressor. Depending on the model that you've got, let's say it needs to be drained daily. I know some of you have self-draining compressors. You know what I mean? Like, what does that piece of equipment need for maintenance? What does the forklift need for maintenance? And then also write down how often that needs to happen. Is it a daily thing? Is it a weekly thing? Is it a monthly thing? Is it an annual thing? Is it after so much volume has gone through it? Are there safety requirements? Is there OSHA requirements? Are there federal requirements for safety? Whatever they are, write those down. There's no secret. We all know when things need to be maintained or sharpened or tuned or whatever it is, right? the most basic system, and this basic system relies on you being the core of it, and that's not a simple system, but it's how we start, is just put those dates in your calendar. And when I say calendar, I mean your online calendar, like your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar. Put a reminder to yourself, right? Every Monday, I change the oil on the X. Or, let's say you run a company where you do landscape maintenance or landscaping or site preparation. Well, every Monday we change the check, change, and top up the oil on the backhoe on this equipment. So that's an every Monday thing, and you have to make it so that that's a rule in your company, right? With a forklift, you actually do need a daily checklist that somebody has to check off and do a safety check of the forklift before the shift starts or at the end of so many hours, probably shift change. So have that made, right? Have that thing made. And then also have a note on there that says, if forklift fails any of these stages, lock out forklift, immediately report to foreman. There you go. Nice and simple system. But yeah, you absolutely need to do this, right? You can figure out how often something needs maintenance. If you've got a piece of equipment that is used every day or used variably, you could still make a great estimation of how often it needs to be maintained. You just have to get into the habit of doing it. It's a simple system. The most simple and basic and old-fashioned system is to just go ahead and make a checklist, put it on a clipboard, and have it attached to the machine or where somebody has to get the machine and make sure they do it. Now, if you've got crews, Brett, you talked about having multiple crews and multiple equipment roaming around. Maybe the crews take the truck home, and so they're not coming to the shop first. But you still have to have a way to remind those guys to check this piece of equipment, check that piece of equipment, because we need to know. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of the customer's time if we're not prepared and ready to go without tools properly sharpened, tools properly lubricated. And then from a safety perspective, we have to be able to prove in the event that something goes wrong that we've been maintaining our tools and equipment properly. So it is up to us in many, many ways to do that. Again, I can appreciate that this is a difficult thing to overcome. It's hard because we're changing the way we're running the business. Brett, the nature of your question, just the fact you're asking it, means you're going through growth and change. So for that, congratulations. I get that it's going to be tough. And you're going to get through this like everybody else has or will in the future. So you're just leading the way for everybody, buddy. Now listen, in the case where those of you listening say, but Dom, you don't know my people. My guys will never fill out a piece of paper. I can't get them to do time tracking and things like that. I don't, the solution is we keep reminding them and we keep being nice and we keep applying constant pressure. But I'll tell you what I used to do is, let's say we had a guy. There's always a guy who just says, Dom, I'm going to spend more time filling out your forms than it does to do the work. Wouldn't you rather me on the tools instead of filling out this stupid paperwork? And there's just no getting through to the guy. And so this has to be a last resort. But I'll tell you, this one used to work like a charm. On payday, I would hold his check. Now, it would be written. It would be on my desk. But before you knew it, I would hear him stomping down the hall, swearing my name, I might add. Where's that Rubino? I got to talk to him right now. And of course, he comes barreling. I can see the guy's face. He comes through the door. Hey, today's payday. Why didn't I get paid? What kind of Mickey Mouse operation are you running here? I'd say, hey, Jerry. Let's say his name was Jerry. Great to see you. Actually, I have your check right here. Well, how come you didn't give it to me? What kind of operation are you running here? I'm a honest day's work, honest day's pay. But, he goes off and I'm like, Jerry, I have your piece of paper right here. This piece of paper is important to you, isn't it? Yeah, quit messing me around. Jerry, there's pieces of paper that are important to me as well. You guys see where this is going. I don't have to do the whole speech. I need you to fill in these timesheets. It's not negotiable. Just like you getting paid isn't negotiable. The check's right here on my desk, my friend. It's been ready the whole time. But you and I seem to be stuck. I need paperwork from you, and today you need paperwork from me. So whatever you feel in your stomach right now is how I feel all the time. Buddy, I need you to do your timesheets. Buddy, I need you to clock in. Buddy, I need you to clock out. Buddy, I need you to do the forklift safety form, whatever it is. Now that we pay people on auto payment, that little tool's gone, but I'll bet you'll find a way to help Jerry recognize the importance of getting you the little pieces of paper you need to run this business. Anyways, Brett, I hope that helped you. A little bit of humor in there. It's a little bit of tough love for sure. Jerry was stomping down that hallway. I'll tell you, I'm sure you guys have had that situation as well. Anyways, that wraps up questions and answers with Dom. Look, if you like this kind of stuff, if you enjoy growing and learning and working on yourself and your business every day, then maybe it's time you joined us in a coaching program. The website to go to is 10xblt.com. It stands for 10 times built. We're going to build your construction company. We actually have a guarantee in place there as well. We're so confident in what we do. You guys know that I've been a business coach for a long time. I'm sure you can see the value from coaching, but the guarantee in coaching is if you don't 5 times your return on investment in 5 months, then we coach you for free until it comes to pass. We're serious about what we do, and I can't wait to work with you. If you're interested, go to 10xblt.com and find a way to apply. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for checking in, folks. Have a great day.